It's our first question today is from Maria. Maria in Joshua Tree, California.
Yeah.
My name is Maria. I'm from Joshua Tree, California. I had a quick question for you guys. I have a very difficult relationship with my parents. They are unsupportive of many of my lifestyle choices and values. My partner, minimalism, my drive to be debt-free, my hobbies, being a pet owner. So often I hear Josh's maxim, you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. Does this apply to my parents? Should there be a finality or an ending, a discussion, therapy? Is it even worth the time and effort it would take to try and fix this awful relationship that has been going on for my entirety of my adult life? How did both of you find it within yourselves to forgive your parents for all their shortcomings? Any help would be appreciated. Thank you very much. And thank you for continuing this wonderful podcast. It brings value each and every week to my life.
Man, I just want to throw a disclaimer out there. This entire episode,
Yes.
I can speak only from my perspective,
Right.
and I feel like I've done a lot of things right when it comes to difficult relationships, unsupportive relationships, but I also think I've done a lot of stuff wrong.
Okay.
So I will definitely share that and own up to it. So I guess I'm just saying this for our listeners because, take what I say with a grain of salt because it is my perspective, and learn from the mistakes that I have made in past toxic relationships.
I think you could isolate that a little bit and apply that to anything that we ever talk about.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
So
specifically this, man, it's like, because there's some hard, in Maria's situation here, I mean, this is a really, her question is how have we forgiven our parents for all of their shortcomings? And like for me, it hasn't been this process of forgiveness. It's really been this process of letting go.
Well, let's talk about forgiving for a second because I
Sure.
think that's important. And she ended her question with that. But I think quite often we forgive not for the other people. We forgive for us. That's sort of the first step in allowing us to let go in the sort of acceptance process.
Yeah.
Quite often it's about forgiving the folks in our lives, not for them. Sometimes they don't even need to know that we forgave them. Sometimes they can't know that we forgive them. Sometimes, like with my mother passing on or my father passing on, they don't know that I've forgiven them at this point. Well, Mom did. We could talk about that her last year here, but that forgiving was partially so I could come to terms with the imperfections that were going on, the lack of acceptance, lack of support.
You're saying forgiveness is part of the healing process.
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
so a few things that I would ask Ryan is with Maria here is, have you asked for their support? I mean, sometimes I think it just comes down to, have you been able to ask for their support?
Yeah.
And then can you show them what that support would look like? Because you can't just say, hey, I need you to support me. What does that mean? Because support to them might mean one thing. Support to them might mean, well, we're always going to make it really difficult for you because we think that's how you are going to grow.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to hold you to our standards instead of your standards. Can you show them what your standards are and why that's important?
Yeah, and for you to just say, oh, I need help, and then like if I just sent you a text, hey Josh, I need help, period.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
You'd be like, great, I'm happy to help you.
right.
But in which way do you need help?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, but here's the other thing. So what if I actually didn't need help, but I was saying that I needed help? And so the question I would ask Maria here is, do you actually need their support? Or what kind of support do you need from them? Maybe it's not what you think you need. Maybe what you actually need isn't what you think you need. And if you do need some support, I totally get it. Why do you need that support?
Yeah, it's funny, man. The in a perfect world, family, it would be people who are closer to you than your closest friends in a perfect world. And I think the idea that I have that's what family should be, it has made me kind of in the same position Maria is, where I feel like I should be getting all of this support, and I feel like I should have really awesome parents, and I've gone out of my way to support them, and I've gone out of my way to live a meaningful life and show them by example. I should have this amazing relationship with my parents.
Right.
And what I have come to realize is that I don't deserve anything. Like I am not entitled to anything.
It's the House of Cards. Remember this?
You are entitled to nothing when he took away Social Security.
Yeah.
It's so good.
But the weird thing is, then he started handing out entitlements after that. But
Right.
but the one thing he said was, "Hey, you're not entitled to anything," and I think that's a good reminder because when we start to have this mentality of, "Here's what I deserve.
Here's what I should have.
Yeah.
Here's the way my life should be going." Your life should not be going anyway.
It becomes a slippery slope, right? Because I think about like ice cream. Well, I've had a good week this week. I deserve an ice cream. No, I don't. I don't deserve an ice cream. If I want to have one, then that's my decision. It's probably not a good decision, but the truth is that I don't deserve anything other than the fundamental rights of kindness and well, I deserve to be left alone and not have people, barge into my house in the middle of the night or something. But for the most part, we don't just deserve all of these extras these are just expectations.
Yeah, dude. I mean, we could live the most meaningful life possible and then walk outside and get hit by a bus.
Right.
I mean, life happens to us whether we're doing the right things or not. I think that when we do the right things and we try to put our best foot forward and we try to respect, appreciate, accept others for their indifferences, I think that will help us to have better results. But there's nothing in life that says we must have awesome results if we're putting in this kind of effort.
Right. It's funny you say that. I was walking into the office today, and I almost stepped in this giant pile of dog poop, and I barely avoided it. Right. And like I was having a rough morning. Like I was really tired, and like I was trying to get my bag packed. So I'm getting ready to take a trip right after this, and man, like then I realized as I missed the dog poop, I'm like, oh, this morning could be way worse. I could have stepped in dog shit. Like, and it's to me that I need to remember that sometimes. Like, it can always be worse, no matter what situation you're in.
Yeah,
you could add dog shit on top of it.
It's so funny.
It's still gonna be worse.
I was thinking to myself, man, if I stepped in dog shit, if I like literally stepped in dog shit, I'd be like, oh, well, it could have been worse. I could have stepped in gum.
yeah, absolutely.
I know what you're saying, man. Well, here's what I have learned, Maria, is that the word family, at least in my experience, it really hasn't meant anything. What family has meant in my experience with a lot of my family members. I'm trying to not like just make a blanket statement here because I have really, really awesome, really supportive family members who would go to the ends of the earth for me, the ends of the flat earth. I'm just joking.
Thank you.
But no, seriously, like people who go way out of the way from me. So I'm not making this a blanket statement for all my family members, but what I'm saying is that there are certain family members who view the term family as I can treat you however I want, and you have to love me because I'm your family member. Or worse, some family members have greater expectations of me because I'm their family member. But then, like the other,
what do you mean they have greater expectations of you?
Like, let me speak from my perspective. People treat me this way, but let me specifically say from my perspective how I've done this in the past. So with my one of my sisters, like she was like this little innocent, my little tiny sister, and I like just had her in this bubble. This the idea of her was like she was in this bubble, uncorruptible, pure, and then I find out she's drinking and smoking dope and doing all the things that I was doing when I was her age, but because she was my sister, like I had this very visceral feeling of like how much she has let me down.
Because this expectation you had of this pristine
right
person.
But there are plenty of people who I hang out with who drink and smoke.
Right.
I still drink alcohol and I'll still smoke, and it's something that it's not. It's a one-way street with that attitude. I guess
when you say you smoke, you don't like smoke cigarettes.
No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I guess I've had a cigarette in the last 10 years or something. But my point is this, is that I am judging her for behavior that I've done, for behavior that I might, I guess I don't currently do it, but my point is that judging her for something that I was doing at her age and raising her standards, but not my own. I think that is the effect that I'm talking about, that certain family members will have. They will raise their standards for you, but not for everyone else in their life or themselves, or I should say non-family members in their life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but so we've talked about standards. The other thing I think we need to talk about here is values, right? And so realize that you might have different either values or beliefs. Now, if you have different values from your parents, Maria, then I think that, yes, it's important to recognize that you just have different values from them. And if they judge you, then their judgment is simply a mirror that reflects their own values that are different from yours. Now, that said, they might just have different beliefs from you and the same values. If they have different beliefs, that's just a different path to get to the same place, to get to those same values. And I think you have to recognize that. The only way to recognize that, though, is to get really clear on what your values are. My partner, Rebecca, and I will sit down often and go over our own values to see what's the same, what's different, how can we improve, how can we raise our standards together so that we're serving and supporting each other's values. In fact, on her website, Sean, if you put a link to this in the show notes, podcast, Sean, I'd appreciate that. Her website's minimalwellness.com. If you go to /values on her website, she did this together we put this together, this values worksheet, I guess you could call it. It's like a little one-page thing to help you identify what your values are. And it's helped me and her make sure that we are on the same page, even when we value something differently, or if we have the same value, but one of us values something more than someone else. If you go back to episode 69 as well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes too. We did an entire episode on values and getting clear on what your values are, because it isn't until you're clear on that, until you know what they are, that you can figure out how you raise your standards appropriately. Otherwise, you're just sort of walking around blindly searching, and you're constantly trying to, and this sounds like what's happening here, trying to live up to someone else's expectations, someone else's values. Now, you and I did this a lot in our 20s, right? And I think that's especially true with people we've looked up to our entire lives, our parents, where they try to instill their values in us. And quite often that can be a good thing if we're provided with the right template, but they also instill their beliefs in us, and those aren't necessarily our beliefs. And quite often they instill their desires or their preferences in us. I think about Serena Williams, Venus and Serena Williams. Their father, I think, had them playing tennis when they were 3 years old. Yeah. And I mean, thankfully that worked out with them. But think about how many other parents are forcing their kids to play the sport that they succeeded at, or maybe didn't succeed
wanted to succeed at. Yeah,
because that's their desire. Is that actually your desire?
Yeah, man. Maria, if you have gone out of your way, if she has gone out of her way to ask for her parents' support, and she has kind of clearly said, here's the support I need, here's the actions that I'm asking if you're willing to do, and they are still in constant opposition of her living a meaningful life. I mean, in my case with my dad, for example, it's a very similar situation to Maria's. I constantly have opposition from him when it comes to the life that I live. And every time I spoke to him, it was a reminder of how I'm letting him down. It was a reminder of how he doesn't agree with my lifestyle. And it was a reminder of how him and I will never have this amazing relationship that I really, really want.
And part of that has to do with some fundamental beliefs that he has with respect to religion that are definitely different from your own beliefs.
Yeah, and ultimately, I don't believe the same things that he believes.
Right.
And I don't follow the same organization that he follows. And because of that, he has created division in our relationship. He did this a year ago, 2 years ago, where he called me up and he's like, "Hey, son, I was just talking to Marilyn, that's my stepmom, and she pointed out to me how I'm not going to go into details with dogmatics and stuff. But ultimately, she pointed out to me how we shouldn't even be having dinner with you. We shouldn't be even having a meal with you.
Yeah.
And if you need something from me, or if you have an emergency, please reach out to me. I'm here for you. But other than that, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
So for years, I was for the last year or two, I was living in this limbo, like on the fence of, is my dad going to cut me off altogether, or is he ever going to like treat me like, like this relationship, like it's a normal father-son relationship? And ultimately,
like the relationship that you wanted,
right? And ultimately, he's not. He is basically using our relationship as leverage to get me to do exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
And whether he's coming from a good place or not, I think he can look in the mirror and say, "Oh, I'm coming from a good place," but he's not considering me at all in that situation. So. In this situation, a few weeks ago, I called him up. I actually wrote him an email, and I just said, "Hey, look, man, I really, really don't like the way that you're treating me, and I have tried for a long time to flatten this relationship out and get it nice and smooth. And you are constantly reminding me how we're never going to have the relationship that I really want." So I have to have a funeral for this relationship. I have to, literally accept the fact that my dad and I will never, ever, ever have that father-son relationship that I so deeply desire.
Yeah.
I still have hope that maybe one day he'll, maybe he has amnesia or something, and he'll hit his head and come to his senses. I don't.
You don't have that expectation,
but I do not have that expectation. So I still do hold on to a little bit of hope. Don't get me wrong, but ultimately I had to cut off all communication with my father, because anytime I communicated with him, it was literally direct opposition to me living a meaningful life. And I think when it comes down to people in our life who are in constant opposition, even if it's half the time, opposition, you have the ability to say, "Hey, you know what? You are constantly not supporting me. In fact, you're doing the opposite of supporting me. You're trying to tear me down, and I really need you to not tear me down." Yeah. And if they continue to tear you down, then there's got to be something has to give, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I have decided to stop stop being in limbo. I have taken myself out of limbo with this relationship, and I've had a funeral for what I know is probably not ever going to happen.
I think that's a great way to put it. I mean, because you also did the work. Because it's not just explaining the what. Like, here are my values.
Right.
You've also done the work to explain why these are your values. And so for Maria, the thing that she needs to also understand is she can say, well, being debt-free is one of my values. But if your parents don't understand why that is a value, or living a simple life is one of your values, if you just say the what, that's the start. That's the first step. But you got to explain the why. And I know you and I know your father really well. And I know you've gone through the work of explaining the why. And also how it has made you a better person for simplifying your life and walking away from your dogmatic years of youth. And how that philosophy, that dogma, was no longer serving you. In fact, it was an impediment toward the meaningful life that you wanted to live. Now, with many people, they don't have to take it as far as having a funeral for the ideal relationship they hope to have. But I think it's important to note, and I'm glad you shared that, because it is an option, because sometimes the best way that you can love somebody is from a distance.
Yeah.